My dear friends, we've gathered together once again. Now settle into your favorite chair and get comfortable, because today I have something special to share with you all. As I prepared this content, I kept thinking about valued viewers like you. Your likes and comments inspired me to give it my very best. I know time is precious. That's why I want to make these minutes truly worthwhile for you. If today's video brings even a small smile to your face or brightens your day just a little, that would make me so happy. Now join me on this journey. But remember, your support is what keeps this channel going. Your likes, comments, and especially your subscriptions give me the strength to continue. Shall we begin? I'm certain this special content I've prepared for you today will bring some wonderful surprises. It began like any other British morning. Grey skies, the faint smell of damp scones in the air, and a BBC reporter somewhere muttering the word drizzle like it was a war crime. But then he arrived. Zach Galifianakis. Wearing a three-piece suit made entirely of corduroy, a monocle that wasn't prescription, and a top hat that was way too tall for TSA regulations, Zach stepped out of a black cab like he was Winston Churchill's drunk cousin. "Take me to the Queen," he said to no one in particular. "I need to discuss corgi taxation." The cab driver sped off. Zach turned to face the iconic Buckingham Palace. Majestic, historic, terrifying in its symmetry. He pulled out a half-eaten Cornish pasty from his coat pocket, took a bite, made a face of betrayal, and whispered, "That's not vegan, is it?" He shuffled down the mall, waving dramatically at confused tourists. Then he spotted them. The royal guards. 3 of them. Unmoving. Unsmiling. Undisturbed by time, space, or the fact that one pigeon had been sitting on a bearskin hat for what appeared to be 3 weeks. Zach, of course, took this as a challenge. "Oh, we're doing this now," he muttered, cracking his neck. "All right, let's play statue chicken." He started small. A polite wave. Nothing. A loud, "Hello there, Mr. Napoleonic Vampire." Nothing. Then he got closer. Too close. He pulled out a kazoo from his pocket and played the Game of Thrones theme directly into the guard's face. Nada. So, like any mature adult in his 50s who starred in The Hangover, Zach escalated. He reached into a satchel labeled Royal Nonsense and pulled out a fake crown made of chicken nuggets, a tea kettle filled with Mountain Dew, a live ferret in a tutu named Benedict Cumberferret. Operation Wake the Guard was in full swing. He crowned himself King Zach I, Supreme Earl of Beards, and declared the front courtyard of Buckingham Palace to be Zakistan population insane. Tourists gathered. Phones came out. One child started live streaming on TikTok while screaming, "He's doing it for the vibes." Then, the moment of madness. Zach leaned in toward one of the guards, got nose to nose, and whispered, "Do you think the Queen has ever farted in one of these hallways?" The guard blinked. Blinked. Gasps erupted. A pigeon fainted. Zach, stunned by his own success, took a dramatic step back and proclaimed, "He lives. He breathes. He breaks character." Then the second guard slightly turned his head. Then the third one adjusted his rifle, ever so subtly. Zach panicked. "Oh crap. It's happening. I broke the British Matrix." Suddenly, a loud trumpet sounded from somewhere unseen. The ground beneath Zach trembled as a small trapdoor opened, and from the depths below emerged a corgi in full SWAT gear. Zach dropped his pasty. Is this a Monty Python fever dream? The corgi barked once. Sharp, regal, menacing. The guards moved in unison. Slow, deliberate, royal as hell. The crowd backed away. A street performer dropped his violin. A Beefeater nearby whispered, "Run." Zach, in full panic mode, threw a scone like it was a smoke bomb and yelled, "Royal Flair!" Nothing happened. He tried to run, but tripped over his own corduroy pants and face planted directly in front of the Queen's statue. The guards halted. The SWAT corgi licked his face once, then trotted away like he'd done this 100 times. Zach lay there, breathing heavily, covered in shame and crumbled pastry. Then silence. The middle guard stepped forward. Slowly, deliberately, he reached into his red coat and pulled out a small note. He handed it to Zach, who opened it with trembling hands. It read, "Nice kazoo. Don't come back." Zach, still lying on the ground, held up a thumbs up. "Respect," he whispered. "Respect." Buckingham Palace was not ready. And to be fair, neither was Zach Galifianakis. It all started when Zach, aimlessly wandering through the palace during what he thought was an open tour, stumbled across a mahogany door with gold lettering that read, "Royal Dairy Wing, authorized cheese personnel only." Now, any rational human being might have paused, might have read the sign, might have wondered, wait, why is there a dairy wing in a royal palace? Zach was not a rational human being. "Oh," he whispered to himself, wide-eyed and already licking his fingers from a rogue bag of Wotsits. "This is where they keep the Queen's cheese." He kicked the door gently with his Crocs sandal. It creaked open like the start of a horror movie no one asked for. Inside, it was colder than Prince Charles's approval. The walls were lined with ancient wooden shelves, stacked with wheels of cheese so moldy, they looked like they'd developed their own culture. Possibly their own government. Possibly opposition parties. The air was damp, tense, smelled like betrayal and Gouda. In the center of the room, under a flickering chandelier made entirely of cow bones, Zach assumed, sat the most sacred dairy relic of the British Empire. Stilton 1. A 500-year-old cheese wheel, wrapped in velvet, sitting on a throne made of butter knives and broken tea saucers. There was even a plaque. "Do not touch. Do not sit. Do not even look too hard." So naturally, Zach sat directly on it, and let out a long, victorious sigh. "Ah," he said, wiping Wotsit dust on his cargo shorts. "Fit for a king's butt." That's when everything went downhill faster than Prince Harry's approval ratings. Somewhere in the depths of the palace, an alarm sounded. Not your regular alarm. This one mooed. Loudly. "Intruder in the dairy vault," shouted a disembodied voice through an intercom made of carved cheddar. Within seconds, the floor beneath Zach shifted like a giant lazy Susan. The entire Stilton platform rotated 180 degrees, revealing a spiral staircase that screamed "bad decision" in 12 languages. Zach screamed too, but mostly because his cheese seat had left an oily circle on the back of his pants. "Oh God," he yelled, stumbling down the stairs as sirens blared and aged dairy products shook violently on their shelves. "I messed with the wrong curd." Meanwhile, above ground, 3 royal guards stood at attention outside the palace. Faces blank, eyes forward, emotionless. That is, until they received the secret distress call. It came through a biscuit-shaped communicator inside their bearskin hats. One guard, nicknamed Sir Crunch-a-Lot, blinked twice, a silent signal. The second, Colonel No Smile, cracked a single knuckle. And the third, Kevin, just farted. Quietly, respectfully. Together, they turned, marched in perfect formation, and sprinted straight into the palace, the weight of cheese-based duty heavy on their shoulders. Back below the palace, Zach had found himself in what appeared to be a training facility. There were dummies wearing chef hats, obstacle courses lined with crackers, and posters that read, "Protect the Stilton. No exceptions. Even if it's Morgan Freeman." Zach tried to sneak away. He tiptoed past a tower of brie, leapt over a wheel of camembert, and slid beneath a laser grid shaped like Swiss cheese holes. He failed. It burned a hole through his hoodie that smelled faintly like fondue. That's when the royal guards arrived. Silently, like shadows dipped in Worcestershire sauce. Zach turned, mid-step, caught off guard. "Oh no," he whispered. They brought the big hats. The guards surrounded him, each holding weapons forged from dairy. A one had a sword made of frozen string cheese. Another had a shield shaped like a Ritz cracker. A Kevin was dual-wielding fondue forks. "You have desecrated the Stilton," growled Sir Crunch-a-Lot. Zach raised both hands in surrender, but one was still holding a baby bell. He dropped it nervously. "I didn't mean to sit on it," he said. "I thought it was like a novelty ottoman. Colonel No Smile stepped forward. That cheese predates the microwave. Kevin gasped. I'll replace it. Zach pleaded. I know a guy in Wisconsin. Really good with cheddar. But the guards didn't move. Instead, they formed a triangle around Zach. A formation known only in classified British dairy combat circles as the fondue enclosure. Just when Zach thought he was doomed to be melted alive under Gouda-based pressure, an unexpected hero arrived. Dame Judi Dench on a Segway, wearing full armor made of baby bells and shouting, "Back off, he's with me." The guards froze. Zach blinked. Wait, what? Judy pulled him close. You sat on the cheese, she asked. He nodded. She stared. Then, she smirked. About damn time someone did, she said. That thing's been hogging the vault since '62. And with that, she tossed him a spoon and whispered, Run. Zach, still covered in cheese oil and confusion, bolted out the vault as the royal guards screamed into their biscuit radios. Zach Galifianakis was running. More accurately, he was waddling at high speed. Legs flailing, arms pumping, face glistening with fear and a suspicious amount of camembert sweat. Behind him echoed the furious footfalls of 3 royal guards, dead silent but utterly relentless. And every few seconds, the PA system blared ominously. Dairy Violation Code 47. Intruder in the Fromage Fortress. Activating the Double Gloucester Protocol. What does that even mean? Zach shouted to no one, dodging a cart full of aged cheddar bricks. Just then, a metal shutter slammed down in front of him, cutting off his path. The floor beneath his Crocs began to tilt. Oh no. No, no, no. Whoosh. The floor transformed into a slide, launching Zach into a spiraling tunnel that smelled like expired fondue. He spun faster and faster, a human mozzarella stick hurtling through centuries of British dairy history. He burst out of the chute and landed hard, on a bouncy surface. It was bread. More specifically, a giant circular platform made of scone dough. He groaned and looked up. He was now in what could only be described as the royal crumb chamber. Massive chandeliers made of sugar cubes hung from the ceiling. Portraits of past monarchs stood on walls, every single one holding cheese. Queen Victoria with Brie. King George III with Stilton. Even King Charles, clearly uncomfortable, holding a single slice of processed cheddar. In the center of the room stood an enormous spinning Lazy Susan of British cheeses, manned by the Duchess of Derry, a stern-looking woman in a gown made entirely of Swiss lace and Edam buttons. She raised a gloved hand. He who disturbs the Stilton must complete the challenge of the crumb, she said, as though that explained anything. Zach blinked. I don't even know what day it is anymore. A booming voice filled the chamber. Challenge. Initiated. A trapdoor opened and out emerged a large corgi wearing armor made of cutlery. Is that Sir Nibbles II? Zach asked. The Duchess nodded gravely. Survive the dog. Win the pardon. Sir Nibbles barked once, and then lunged at Zach with all the fury of 1,000 overcooked shepherd's pies. Zach ducked, rolled, and grabbed a nearby baguette like a sword. The corgi leapt. Zach parried. The two locked in a duel of carbohydrate versus canine, baguette against biscuit-fanged fury. The crowd, yes, there was a crowd, mostly butlers and distant royal cousins, cheered wildly. Zach shouted mid-duel, Is anyone else seeing this? I didn't even eat the cheese. I sat on it. Sir Nibbles responded by somersaulting and throwing a wheel of Havarti at him like a ninja star. Zach caught it, bit it, winced. Too sharp. Needs honey. Suddenly, the Lazy Susan stopped spinning. A trapdoor beneath Zach's feet opened once again, and he fell, screaming. When he landed this time, it was softly, in a giant vat of clotted cream. He wiped his face, mouth half full, yelling, This is not how I thought my day would go. A door opened in the cream chamber. He climbed out, drenched, only to find himself in the Royal Confectionery Arena. Think Roman Colosseum, but made entirely of dessert. Standing opposite him, Colonel Custard. A royal guard in golden armor, eyes hidden behind custard-colored sunglasses, wielding a spoon the size of a canoe. "You're going to be dipped," the colonel growled. "In what?" Zack asked. "Respect." Colonel Custard charged. Zack ducked behind a sugar statue of Winston Churchill, which immediately cracked in half and collapsed on top of him. He burst out, gasping, one arm sticky with marmalade. He grabbed a jelly trifle like a dodgeball and launched it. Direct hit, Custard slipped, his spoon flying through the air like a sweetened boomerang. It embedded itself in a nearby wall, which began to crumble. And behind that wall, daylight, freedom. Zack sprinted toward the hole. Custard reached out to stop him, but slipped again, this time into a pit of chocolate mousse. Zack broke into the open. He gasped. He was back in the Buckingham Palace courtyard. Tourists stared. Phones came out. The royal guards outside turned, shocked to see him covered in dairy, jam, and shame, but somehow victorious. Zack stood tall, breathless, wobbly, sticky. He raised one cream-covered arm. "I declare independence. From cheese." A single clap echoed. It was Dame Judi Dench again, this time wearing sunglasses and a windbreaker. She lit a sparkler. "You did good, Galifianakis," she said. "Now let's get you a real scone." They walked off together, leaving behind the wreckage of a monarchy's most sacred cheese room. And as Zack disappeared into the distance, one last announcement echoed across the palace loudspeakers. "This is not a drill. The Stilton has been sat on. I repeat, the Stilton has been sat on." Zack Galifianakis stood on the palace lawn, drenched in clotted cream, bits of scone stuck to his socks, and a determined glint in his eye. The tourists had gone silent. Every phone pointed toward him like a sea of awkward, sweaty paparazzi. In front of him, 3 royal guards stood in formation. Behind them, the Duchess of Derry reappeared, now holding a ceremonial ladle. It glistened ominously in the sunlight like Excalibur, but stickier. "Mr. Galifianakis," she announced formally, "you have desecrated the sacred cheeses, disrupted the dessert arena, and sat upon the Stilton of remembrance." Zack blinked. To be fair, it looked like a poof. "Regardless," she continued, "the Royal Dessert Council is prepared to offer clemency under one condition." He held up his hands. "Listen, if you want me to eat any more dairy-based obstacles, I have to warn you, I'm lactose-tolerant, but emotionally fragile." She raised the ladle higher. "You must face the cheesecake gauntlet." Gasps echoed across the courtyard. One old butler fainted. A corgi barked solemnly. Zack squinted. "That sounds like a seasonal menu item at Olive Garden." The Duchess snapped her fingers. From the palace steps emerged a new figure, Sir Gregory Fondant, a royal guard in a pristine red uniform, but with a dessert-themed cape and an actual cherry balanced perfectly atop his bearskin hat. He carried a briefcase. Zack narrowed his eyes. "What's in the case?" Sir Gregory clicked it open dramatically. Inside, a single slice of cheesecake. Perfect. Unblemished. Velvet smooth. With a golden spoon resting beside it. Sir Gregory spoke. "To restore harmony between the crown and dairy kind, you must eat this slice of cheesecake." Zack nodded. Without breaking eye contact. Zack froze. That's weirdly intense." The Duchess nodded. "Thus is the way of the Custard Codex." The crowd went wild. Zack sat down slowly at the ornate table set before him. A bell chimed. A squirrel nearby saluted. He picked up the spoon. Sir Gregory took position across from him, eyes locked. Intense. Regal. Slightly allergic-looking. Zack dipped the spoon, lifted the bite, and stared deep into Gregory's soul. The bite entered his mouth. Silky. Creamy. Emotionally confusing. He chewed. Swallowed. Still staring. Gregory's left eye twitched. Zack blinked, slowly, as if asserting alpha cheesecake dominance. A tear slid down Gregory's cheek. The Duchess stepped forward. He has completed the gauntlet. Fireworks made of whipped cream burst in the sky. Corgis backflipped. A children's choir sang, "God Save the Queen," in kazoo harmony. Zack stood. Cheesecake victorious. Gregory fell to his knees, overcome by lactose and awe. The Duchess held up the ladle. From this moment forth, let it be known that Zack Galifianakis is hereby dubbed the Earl of Unexpected Dairy Diplomacy. A crown made of braided licorice was placed upon his head. Tourists cheered. Someone shouted, "We love you, Dairy King." Zack raised one arm slowly. "Thank you, Great Britain. You've been creamy." Shortcake bonus scene. Heathrow mayhem. Zack arrived at Heathrow Airport hours later, still in his sticky licorice crown, holding a plastic bag full of custard samples labeled Royal Evidence. At security, a stern guard pointed at the bag. "What is this?" Zack whispered, "Artifacts from a cheese-based monarchy war. Also some flan." The agent blinked. "Sir, you're going to need to step aside." 10 minutes later, Zack was detained by two overly polite officers named Nigel and Colin, who debated whether the Stilton Treaty was covered under NATO. As he sat in a holding chair made of recycled jam jars, Zack sighed. This was supposed to be a relaxing trip. Just tea. Maybe a corgi selfie. Colin handed him a complimentary shortbread. Nigel asked, "Would you like to press charges against the Duchess of Derry?" Zack shook his head. No. She was just following the Derry doctrine. They both nodded in respectful silence. Soft ice cream final frame. Back in the U.S., Zack arrived on Jimmy Fallon's show covered in tiny flags, powdered sugar, and still confused about most of the events. Jimmy asked, "What happened over there?" Zack stared deadpan at the camera. "I was knighted by cheese." Fade to black. Text overlay. Stillness isn't weakness. Cheesecake isn't optional. And sometimes, peace is found between two spoons. Zack sat there on Jimmy Fallon's stage, still wearing the sticky braided licorice crown, looking like a man who'd just been knighted by cheese and drenched in whipped cream. "Look," he said slowly, "getting knighted by dairy is one thing. But this gig? It's like juggling flaming eclairs while riding a unicycle, blindfolded." Jimmy laughed. "So what's next? You starting a dairy Peace Corps or something?" Zack grinned. "Funny you mention that. This crown comes with a legacy, a mysterious note tucked inside the lining about something called the licorice legacy. Basically, the dessert world's been in a Cold War, but with pastries instead of missiles, and spies wielding piping bags." The crowd chuckled as Zack pulled out the crumpled parchment and read dramatically. "To the Earl of Unexpected Dairy Diplomacy, the licorice legacy awaits. Only the chosen can navigate the sticky corridors of confectionery politics. Your first mission, broker peace in the sugar wars." Jimmy raised his eyebrows. "Sugar wars?" "Oh yeah," Zack nodded. "Turns out, the dessert world is basically a battlefield of marzipan and caramel clans, and I'm the new mediator. Not sure if I'm ready for the sugar rush or the political drama." Zack's phone buzzed. He glanced down. A text from the Duchess of Derry. "Meet me at the Custard Codex room. Urgent." Jimmy teased, "Sounds like your first real assignment." Zack sighed. "Yeah, no more casual tea parties for me." The next morning, Zack stood outside a giant oak door decorated with whipped cream swirls and licorice vines, the entrance to the Custard Codex room, deep in Buckingham Palace's secret dessert wing. He knocked. The door swung open, revealing the Duchess of Derry, shimmering in a gown made of spun sugar and candy beads. "Welcome, Earl," she said warmly but firmly. "There's much to discuss." Inside, a long table held an unusual council. Macaron Pierre, a French diplomat with delicate manners, a burly Scottish shortbread baron, and a mysterious figure cloaked in chocolate. "This is the Sugar Council," the Duchess explained. "They keep dessert factions from erupting into full-scale war." Zack swallowed. "And I'm their newest mediator," she said. "You're here to settle disputes and keep the peace." The council eyed him with a mix of curiosity and skepticism. The first crisis hit quickly. Macaron Pierre slammed a tiny hand on the table. The Scottish shortbread has been stealing my éclair designs. The shortbread baron growled, crumbs falling from his sash. Nonsense. I make my own recipes. Zach pinched his nose. Okay, let's calm down. Maybe it's a misunderstanding. The chocolate figure spoke for the first time, voice smooth like melted fudge. In the sugar wars, misunderstandings are just the first layer of a bigger cake. I'm Lord Ganache, he introduced himself. And unity is the secret ingredient. 4 hours, Zach navigated debates over ganache superiority, jelly bean currencies, and territorial disputes between sugar plum fairies and licorice lollipop unions. He took notes, nodded, and discreetly snacked on shortbread to survive. The Duchess whispered, "Patience and open minds, the custard codex demands." Zach muttered, "Also a strong stomach." Days later, Zach was sent on his first field mission. Dressed in candy button embroidery, carrying a satchel of diplomatic desserts, he traveled to the Sugary Summit in the Frosted Forest, a place where sugar crystals hung like icicles and gumdrops grew wild. There, marshmallow monks and toffee trolls had been fighting over the sacred sugar crystal springs. Zach offered a peace pudding, cracked jokes about sticky situations, and slowly laughter replaced snarls. By summit's end, the factions shook gooey hands and broke a giant sugar cookie stamped, "Sweet Peace." Back at the palace, Zach discovered the Licorice Legacy Scroll, a prophecy that only a sweet and strong-hearted earl could end the sugar wars. He ventured through secret dessert tunnels, dodging chocolate traps and gingerbread soldiers, nearly drowning in raspberry coulis, until he found the sticky scepter, a majestic rod topped with a giant licorice swirl. Returning, Zach presented the scepter to the Sugar Council. Cheers erupted, and the sugar wars finally ended. Zach realized his job wasn't about crowns but turning bitterness into sweetness, even if it meant wading through custard and licorice traps. Looking around at macarons, shortbreads, and chocolatiers, he felt purpose, and maybe less lactose anxiety. The gummy bear carriage came to a slow, wobbling stop just outside the swirling peppermint leaves of the frosted forest. Zach adjusted his candy button embroidered coat nervously, glanced down at his satchel jingling with diplomatic desserts, and took a deep breath. Around him, delegates from every dessert faction imaginable milled about, chatting in a confusing cacophony of confectionery dialects. Licorice lollipops with tartan scarves exchanged heated words with powdered sugar-dusted croissants sporting monocles. Marshmallow monks hummed syrupy chants while nibbling on honeycomb scrolls. The air smelled of cinnamon, caramel, and just a hint of impending chaos. Zach swallowed. This was it. The Sugary Summit, the largest, most chaotic gathering in dessert diplomacy history. And he was smack dab in the middle of it. The opening ceremony was nothing short of spectacular. Lady Éclair, chair of the Sugar Council, took to the podium. Her hat, a towering confection of spun sugar glittering under the chandelier light, seemed to defy gravity. "Welcome, noble confectioners and dessert diplomats," she announced with regal poise. "Today, we set aside our differences and gather as sweet siblings, bound by the shared goal of peace. Let us remember that peace is as delicate as the perfect meringue and as vital as the freshest cream." Zach nodded along, trying not to look overwhelmed by the sheer scale of sugared political theater. Soon enough, Zach found himself in a heated debate that was equal parts hilarious and sticky. Macaron Pierre, a tiny but fiery French diplomat with a penchant for dramatic size, accused the Scottish shortbread baron of theft. "My éclair designs have been pilfered," Pierre exclaimed, flourishes included. The shortbread baron, a crusty but proud figure with crumbs perpetually clinging to his tartan sash, shot back, "I craft my own pastries, merci. Your éclairs are far too sweet for my rugged tastes." The room filled with murmurs and delicate clinking of teacups. Zach sighed inwardly, thinking, "Welcome to sugar politics." Just then, a deep voice cut through the tension. "In the sugar wars," said Lord Ganache, draped in a flowing chocolate cloak, "misunderstandings are but the first layer of a larger, more complex cake." The room fell silent. Zach raised an eyebrow. "That's some serious dessert metaphor." Ganache smiled. "And unity is the secret ingredient. Without it, all we have is a messy kitchen." 4 hours, Zach navigated the whirlwind of sugary politics. There were disputes over who held the sacred recipe for ganache supremacy, debates about whether jelly beans could be considered legal tender, and negotiations concerning the borders of the sugar plum fairy's realm and the licorice lollipop union's domain. Zach scribbled notes, nodded thoughtfully, and stealthily nibbled on shortbread to stay sane. At one point, a rogue licorice whip lashed dangerously close to his ear. "Watch the whip," Zach exclaimed, ducking behind a towering eclair. Days later, Zach was dispatched on his first official mission. He arrived at the legendary Frosted Forest, a realm where sugar crystals hung like icicles from peppermint boughs and gumdrops sprouted wild on candy bushes. His task: broker peace between the marshmallow monks and the toffee trolls, whose dispute over the sacred sugar crystal springs threatened to erupt into open conflict. The marshmallow monks, soft-spoken but fiercely devoted, insisted the springs were their sacred source of sticky power. The toffee trolls, gruff and crunchy, argued the springs lay within their caramel-coated territory. Negotiations quickly turned sticky, literally. Molten chocolate fountains became impromptu weapons, peanut brittle shards flew across the room, and tempers melted faster than a sundae in July. Zach intervened with an offering: